And I don't know if Victor is going to join us this morning. Yep. Check with Craig to see if there's anybody waiting on Zoom.
No, there is not.
There is not, so we don't need to worry about anybody. And at this point, I don't see any members of the public other than James, who's here as a potential future alternate trustee. Can you hear me, Craig?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I want to make sure I was coming through on the microphone. So could I have a motion to approve today's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, amendments there too? Hearing none. All those in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Those abstaining? Motion is carried. We have some minutes to catch up on, and we probably should do them one at a time. We tabled the December 20th minutes because we had not gotten them posted I think it was like the day before or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure everybody had a chance to read through them, so we set that aside. So I guess first, a motion to approve the minutes of December 20th.
I will make that.
So hearing nothing, all those in favor of approving the minutes of December 20th, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. The minutes of December 20th, 2024 are hereby approved. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 24th, 2025?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, amendments, edits. Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes of January 24th, 2025 signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion is carried. Joan, we're probably at a good point that we should address the Dorothy Wilcox Trust. So we're going to do things a little bit out of order.
Thank you for
in
doing
deference
that.
to our visitors today.
I'm Joan Drapo.
Why don't we'll have you sit down and maybe scoot that microphone in front of you because the meeting is being recorded. Thank you.
I'm Joan Drapo from Durham here, Sullivan Falls Road. And I came to ask a couple of questions about the Dorothy Wilcox Trust Fund. And this is my friend.
I'm Deborah Muncie. I actually live in the Wilcox home on Old Landing Road, and I'm here to support Joan.
Excellent. Welcome.
Excuse me, may I request you to say your name again, just for the record?
Sure, Deborah Muncie, Munsey.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so one of my questions is, I was reading this, and I couldn't exactly figure out how much interest is left in the fund.
And I was just going to check one more thing because we got something in the mail yesterday. So if you give me just a second to pull a piece of information up, I might be able to give you the number as of January 31st.
Okay.
It's here. I think it's this one. As of January 31st, 2025, there is $16,716.40.
Good.
Yeah, not a trivial amount.
So now I guess my question is there any plans to spend any of that money? We talked last year, and we talked with Sam and people here on this board, and they had talked about doing something down at the landing, which is where the money is supposed to be
Right.
spent, down by the pedestrian bridge. And of course, that isn't your department to see the money get spent, right? I mean, to.
Right, actually,
to see-
our role is just to ensure that the money that does get expended is expended within the terms of the trust.
And that's for the improvement of the landing area and the mill pond area.
Right.
Okay, so it just bothers me that all this money is sitting there and it isn't being utilized.
I understand that. And again, this group is not the one that decides, oh, let's put new benches there or add gravel to the lot and things like that. To some degree, I think the Department of Public Works would be the folks that say, oh, we need X, and so where can we find money for X? Then they would come here. I'm not sure exactly what your role is in the Wilcox Trust.
Mine is that I was a friend of Dorothy's. I was a friend of hers. My husband met her first. He used to have a nonprofit organization where he did work for the elderly to help them stay in their homes. So then we met Dorothy and we became good friends of hers. So that's my role, just to
Right.
to kind of follow through on her wishes.
So I guess what we would probably should do is see who is the decision-making body in terms of the trust itself. There are trusts within the town, the purview of the town and this committee that actually have individuals named or positions named as sort of
Excuse,
the deciders of what to do with that trust.
excuse me, so the little solar light that is there now,
Right.
who acquired that? Who?
That would be, the DPW would have put it there.
And did they come to you?
They came to us and would simply ask, we're going to put a solar light down there. It costs a number, let's pick a number, $250. And we would look at it and say, okay, that is within it's there for the improvement of the thing, the town landing, or the landing over here, or the park over here. Therefore, it falls within the boundaries of the trust. We would approve that. We don't get into the details of should the light be 4 feet above the ground, 6 feet above the ground, should there be 5 of them, or 4 of them, or 1 of them.
But you would approve that if
If there were,
DPW...
if it were within the budget and in the framework, yes, we would. So we don't get into the design elements or the specifics of the request. It's mostly a question of, is it within the framework of the trust that has been established? Is there sufficient funds in the account to cover that expense? If the answer to those questions are yes, then we sign off on it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe where we need to go then is to a meeting with the Public Works. to
In
see if-
general, yes, I would
see
say
if
that
they're
that
gonna
would be
spend some of this
well, I would
money.
contact Rich Ryan, and if you had some specific ideas of things that you thought ought to be done down there, relay them to him, and he and his staff can do the necessary due diligence to figure out, okay, yeah, that'll work, or gee, that's a great idea, or we could do that, but it would take way more money than it, they're the ones that know how to get things done and would actually be in charge of getting it done, whether they did it themselves or they contracted with somebody to come in and do some piece of work.
So as long as it was anything to improve that area, one of both of the areas, they would come to you and you'd say, yes, that's okay, and then they would do it.
Exactly. So
Okay, so in the
So
time...
they would need to, let's pick something, say we wanted improvement of the lighting, by way of example, of solar light. And somebody proposed to them that we have stadium stanchions down there, and there was enough money to do that. If that didn't fit into what the town wanted down there, the DPW would be in, say, no, we're not putting stadium stanchions down there. It's out of the character, even though there's enough money to put stadium stanchions down there, and people have suggested it. We think a couple of new solar lights would be just fine. So we would essentially follow the lead of what the DPW says that they would like to have down there. So in terms of making improvements, I guess as friends of Dorothy Wilcox, working with the DPW to suggest to them that, gee, the picnic benches look tired. Wouldn't it be nice to get new picnic benches? Or whatever the expenditure would be. And they say, oh yeah, that makes great sense. We'll figure out how much they cost, and we'll take the request over to the trustees of the trust funds, and we'll have new picnic benches. So I think that's how the process works.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
that answers my questions. It's just that, like I said before, to see all this money sitting here and not being utilized, to me is not right,
Right.
because that's what she wanted to have done.
And I think it probably will take folks like you who have a sincere and long-standing interest in following through on what Dorothy would have wanted down there, to occasionally prod the DPW to do something. They have a big agenda to do lots of stuff around town that they barely can get to,
I know.
and trying to remember that, oh, by the way, down at the town landing, we could use new picnic benches. It will probably slip off their agenda pretty fast compared to everything else, unless somebody, gee whiz, how about this?
Well, unfortunately, there's just the two of us.
But they have stepped up. They have stepped up and maintained the garden beautifully. And I know Joan had been doing that for years. So I think they're very workable,
Yeah.
hopefully.
One of the things that I might suggest then might be to maybe recruit a couple of more folks who have
supporting
interest.
us.
Maybe not people who knew Dorothy, because, as time passes, the number of people who knew Dorothy will begin to diminish. But there are people who enjoy the town landing.
Oh, yes.
Enjoy the little park over here, and might be very amenable to learning a little bit more about it and becoming involved in the process of prodding DPW to keep it maintained.
True. Just, so just one other question. Is it in your responsibility to see that the $16,000 gets utilized? Or if no one came forward and said, let's do something with this money, would it be your responsibility to say, oh, look at all this money here, what are we going to do with it?
That's an interesting question, because generally that's not the case. It's more a case of, well, there's not enough money there anymore. Cemetery trust funds are great examples of that, where there's a little bit in the cemetery trust funds, but it's not enough to get the work done. and in all the other town capital reserve accounts, sewer, water, fire departments, school departments, things like that. They have folks thinking hard about how the money was appropriated for specific things, and when time comes, as it did this past December, to spend a fairly big chunks of money, it gets spent, so it doesn't lay around. We're just going to take a quick look to see if the Wilcox Fund is in any way unique.
Interest only can be spent.
Right, and that's true of others. So there's one that's got, I can figure out what that line is. Well, there's a fire station expendable trust that's got $50,000 in it. But the fire station typically, there's one that's got 12. Let's see what that is. There's a high school scholarship perpetual fund that's got $12,000 in it, but scholarship money tends to get spent off. So I can't say that the Wilcox Trust is unique. It's perhaps different, unique in the sense that there's not a body regularly dipping into it, but it it's probably, there are several funds that have incomes in it, and the Dorothy Wilcox would probably be the second highest amount, followed by the school.
All right, well, that's one of my concerns, is that somebody overlooks this to see that something does get done, that the money does get spent. And is that us? Debbie and me and anyone else who's
Well,
interested?
I suppose, because the town has ultimate responsibility through the DPW for those facilities, those areas, they're the ones, when it comes up, that if they recognize that something needed to be done, they know there is some money
There is
available
money
here
there
to
for
do that
okay.
it doesn't necessarily have to come out of some other line item. Simple things like, mowing the grass and regular maintenance, they just cover through their
Yeah, that's their
DPW
regular
budget.
budget.
But if there were some other things, and I picked a picnic table example, well, we hadn't planned on that. We need like 5 new picnic tables. Well, they're $300 or $400 a piece. Where do we get the money? Oh, we know where they get the
We
money.
have that
They
fund,
come to the
yeah,
Dorothy
okay.
Wilcox Fund.
Okay.
In some cases, maybe it's something as small, I don't remember what the solar light cost. It wasn't very much.
No.
Doing the paperwork to move a couple $100 out of this account versus we'll just eat it within the DPW budget, which is X million dollars.
Would be easier and faster
It's just
for them.
easier, yeah. And so maybe some of that non-expenditure is a result of the ask for money hasn't been big enough to kick the system into gear. So, oh, I don't want to spend that much money out of my account. Where can we find some other money?
I think,
I'm not sure if the terms of the trust can be modified, if you have that authority. But if perhaps it's possible that, the terms of the trust can be restated to say that income should be spent every, year or so, or every 2 years or so. And so, that would trigger, expenditures because it is stipulated in the trust. So I don't know if that's possible, though.
That could be a lot of picnic tables. They'd be stacking up.
Yeah, I think the income this past year, by way of example,
I found it hard to understand this chart.
yeah, there might have been a couple of maybe? Yeah, that would be about right. Year-to-date income. I'm not sure I'm looking at the right. Yeah, I don't see it right off. But it's got a principal in the neighborhood of, let's see. Unfortunately, this spreadsheet's not the world's easiest to move around in. It has a market value of about $74,000. So times 5%, 6%, you're in a couple $1,000s.
A number of years ago, I did ask Peter Smith. Peter Smith was a student of Dorothy's back years ago. And then I asked Peter, I said, can anything be done to change the will so that you can spend some money from the principal amount? Because that's another thing. That money's going to be there 100 years from now. And I thought,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
Peter,
there is a legal process, but I'm not an expert in that.
Peter did some investigating, and I don't know what he did, but he came back and he says, no, he says it's not possible, but,
That could be.
but,
But in any event, there is money there, and it's not getting spent, so releasing money from the principal, unless there's some
Yeah.
project that
Right,
would
right.
actually need that, then it's something that we have to think about.
well, okay, I guess we make an appointment with the,
DPW.
With the
I would start
Public Works
with
and-
the director, with Rich Ryan.
okay. Thank you for your time, and
Thank you.
thank you for moving us up to the top of your agenda.
Thank you for coming in,
Thank you, thank you.
and watch your step on the black ice out there. Anybody else have anything to add before our guests depart?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate you coming in and reminding us that it's there. And I think you explained it very well, Ted. Thank you.
All right. All right, back into the straightforward direction of our usual pattern. A quick report on Doe Farm and Land Stewardship Subcommittee. I'll do the Land Stewardship Subcommittee first. We met earlier this month, I think on the 12th. And the primary discussion there had to do with the control of invasive species, primarily invasive plant species. And Rich Ryan at DPW gave a nice presentation on the DPW's approach, primarily controlling invasive vegetation invasive species vegetation near rights-of-way, along roadways and things like that. They have licenses and all the other things that they need to have in order to make that happen. And I believe that entire process is on the DPW website, so if anybody would like to go see that. The impetus behind that, some individuals who live on the Fitz Farm development over near the high school have a wetland in which they have periodically invested in funds, or their funds, to control some of the invasive species that show up on that wetland. And they were curious whether, nothing else, they were pushing a rope, because if the town has invasive species on the rights of way near that are just feeding their system, what's going on? And they wanted to be sure that they were at least working parallel to the town and not against the town in terms of their process, and did the town have any ideas that might help them control? So it was a very nice discussion about that. And that's where Rich followed up with the discussion of the town's process for controlling invasive species, primarily along rights-of-way, and occasionally off rights-of-way. We, as trustees of the trust funds, do some invasive species control on the property that we're responsible for, the Doe Farm. And I believe in our last meeting, we approved an expenditure for a follow-up foliar treatment. And I did hear from Deb Alstrom that said, can't find it in the minutes where you all had approved that activity before. I said, I know we talked about it, so I chased it down, and it turned out that Sarah Callahan, who was our former land stewardship coordinator, had sweet-talked the Conservation Commission into picking up the tab. And that's what it showed in our minutes. But unless you kind of follow that, Deb was looking for us having formally approved a contract. We didn't, because we didn't have to. And so now that she's going to go ding the Conservation Commission instead of the trustees for that money. That does raise the longer-term question about what we ought to be doing down there. We have spent significant funds over the years in terms of invasive species control. And I think part of what we'll hear from our forestry consultant is a little bit about what we might want to continue to do, or as we suggested about our friends at the Fitz Farm, are they pushing a rope? Is this just something that's going to be insurmountable? And at best we can make some token efforts here and there, but the nature of the invasion is such that we've already lost and we just don't know it. And part of that issue, of course, is that we're a mere 85, 87 acres surrounded by lots of other people, and lots of people wander onto our property, and who knows what they carry with them. And last time I checked, the birds fly very well, and they drop their seeds wherever they jolly well want to. And if we happen to have a good growing place for those seeds, then we're fighting. So anyway, that was a report from the Land Stewardship Subcommittee. Does anybody have any questions about that part? So I've got Land Stewardship Subcommittee. The contract was carried by somebody else. We're so good with that. And the third piece, I sent around copies of the contract from Charlie Marino, our consulting forester,